the Johnson family moved into a centuries-old house that seemed to have tales etched into its time-worn walls. Eliza, Mark, and their young daughter Emily were captivated by the charm of the aged structure, despite its slightly eerie atmosphere. Little did they know that the past held secrets eager to unfold. As the family settled in, Eliza decided to explore the attic, a dusty space filled with forgotten relics of yesteryears. Among the cobweb-covered boxes and musty furniture, she discovered a long-forgotten dollhouse, its miniature windows adorned with faded curtains and its tiny rooms filled with delicate furniture. It seemed untouched by time, frozen in a bygone era. Intrigued, Eliza decided to clean up the dollhouse, thinking it would make a charming addition to Emily's room. As she wiped away the layers of dust, a peculiar feeling settled over her. The miniature dolls within the dollhouse seemed to stare at her with tiny, lifeless eyes watching every move she made. Emily delighted in her newfound treasure, and it seemed to have a hold over her unlike any other toy she possessed. The family gathered around the dollhouse in the evenings, marveling at the intricate details of each room. However, as the nightfall deepened, strange occurrences began to unfold. Eliza and Mark noticed subtle changes. The position of the tiny chairs shifted, and the dolls appeared to move when they weren't being observed. Convinced it was mere imagination, they dismissed their growing unease. But as the nights persisted, the family could no longer deny the eerie reality unfolding within the dollhouse. The dolls seemed to take on a life of their own, engaging in miniature tea parties and dances, their diminutive voices heard in the quiet of the night. One evening, Eliza, unable to resist the bizarre fascination, stayed behind to observe the dollhouse. The dolls, seemingly aware of her presence, froze in place. The air thickened with tension as Eliza witnessed the impossible. The dolls resumed their animated activities, acknowledging her with their tiny gazes. She screamed and bolted from the room to share her discovery with Mark, who, despite his skepticism, agreed to keep a watchful eye on the dollhouse. The following night, the family gathered, casting uneasy glances at the dollhouse as if expecting it to reveal its secrets. As the clock struck midnight, the dolls came to life, reenacting scenes from the family's own lives with uncanny precision. Realization dawned upon the Johnsons. The dollhouse wasn't just a forgotten relic, it was a vessel of the past, a conduit for the spirits lingering within the old house. The dolls, trapped in a perpetual loop, sought to communicate their stories, reliving moments of joy and sorrow, hoping for release. As the tiny tea party within the dollhouse continued, the voices grew louder and more animated. Eliza and Mark exchanged puzzled glances as the miniature sounds seemed to approach them. In the dimly lit room, Eliza felt a sudden tickle on her eyebrow. Assuming it was a mere insect, she absent-mindedly swatted at it. They discovered a minuscule figure on Eliza's hand. Its tiny face bore an expression that mirrored both mischief and malice. The couple watched in disbelief as the creature, no larger than a thumb, clung to her index finger. "You've trespassed into our realm," it chimed. "Now you shall be part of the eternal gathering." Eliza and Mark, paralyzed with fear, watched as more of these ethereal creatures emerged from the dollhouse. The once charming tea party had transformed into a spectral congregation, and the creatures, now surrounding them, seemed to be animated by an unseen force. Eliza felt a cold presence enveloping her, and the miniature beings closed in. As they touched her skin, she could sense memories and emotions flooding into her consciousness. Fragments of joy, sorrow, and despair from lives long past. Desperation clutched at Mark's senses, compelling him to reach for the dollhouse in a fervent attempt to sever the eerie connection between the diminutive beings and his wife. As his fingertips brushed against the miniature structure, a sudden surge of energy coursed through him, and his body began to shrink. Suddenly, his limp form was propelled across the room. Meanwhile, Eliza found herself engulfed by the ethereal creatures, their tiny forms clinging to her like insidious spectres. Simultaneously, her surroundings began to warp and distort as she also shrunk to the size of a thimble. As her eyelids grew heavy and darkness encroached upon her vision, the tiny voices harmonized in an unsettling unison, whisper,
"Welcome to our world.